Right. Welcome to ISEE AWPC Education and Capacity Building webinar, Tips from an Editor. I'm Xiao, and I'm your host today. I'm an Executive Counselor and the Chair of the Education Subcommittee at ISEE AWPC. I work at the University of New South Wales, Sydney, Australia, as an Associate Professor in Urban Health and Environment. The aim of our webinars is to regularly connect ISEE AWPC members and inspire early and mid-career researchers in environmental epidemiology. I would like to thank for my colleagues and ISEE AWPC executive counselors, Julie, Asuka, Xiaowei, and Weijie's support. So today we have guest speaker, Professor ADRIAN to share with us tips on publishing from an editor's view. Please follow us via Twitter, ISEE AWPC, and the website for forthcoming event. If you would like to provide feedback or nominate speakers, please email me xiaoqi.feng@unsw.edu.au. Before we start the seminar with ADRIAN, I would like to show my respects and acknowledge the Bandico people who are the traditional custodians of the land of elders past, present, and emerging on which this meeting takes place, Kensington, Sydney. In the first 30 minutes of today's webinar, ADRIAN will give a presentation. You can ask questions by tapping in the Q&A chat window. I will read out your questions to ADRIAN for him to answer after the presentation. Professor ADRIAN is currently a professor of environmental toxicology and chemistry at the University of Antwerp, Belgium. He is the current director of the Toxicology Center. He has co-authored more than 580 articles in peer-reviewed journals and has an H-index of 85. His paper have been cited more than 22,000 times, which has earned him the title of highly cited researcher in each year since 2015. ADRIAN is a co-editor-in-chief for Environment International and an associate editor for Science of the Total Environment. Welcome, ADRIAN. Over to you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Xiao, for the introduction. I'm just going to start sharing the screen. Can you please let me know if you see my screen? Do you see my screen at this moment?
I can. I hope they can too. I'm just asking them.
Okay.
So they will give us a little bit feedback if you don't mind. Wait for a second, just in case.
Well, I will start with some very general comments. So, as you have heard, I'm working for two journals. One as co-editor-in-chief for Environment International, and for Science of the Total Environment as associate editor. So I have different views or the different positions for these journals. But also, as you have heard, I'm an author. I'm a reviewer myself quite a lot, and so I've seen all the different aspects of the editorial process. So I'm going to share a lot of my own perspective, maybe my own experiences, and they are not necessarily those of Elsevier. I want to make that very clear. So I'm not endorsing Elsevier by any means, but it's by chance that I'm editor for those two journals. So maybe we should start with the first question: why do we need to publish? Well, of course, it's a very necessary step in the scientific research, but is also needed for our graduation and also career progressing. And as you heard also from my biography, people are ranked a little bit function of their how many papers they have published, also their H index and all the citations and so forth. So what do we want to publish? So we want to publish new and original results. Of course, we can also summarize previous research and put some our own own flavor, making different reviews, but we certainly need to publish manuscripts which advance the knowledge and understanding in a certain scientific field. What we do not want to publish is outdated work. I do have maybe 5 or 6 papers since 2004 or so. I'm pretty sure that those ones will never get published because it's outdated. Also, reports of no scientific interest that we should avoid, and certainly duplication of previous work. So that's very, very important. So what do we want? A strong manuscript to present the contribution to the scientific community. What is a strong manuscript? That's my personal opinion. It has to be a novel and innovative character. That's one point, and then it has to be clear. If it's not clear at the first reading, then it's not clear at all. So you have to make sure that you are writing in a clear way. The presented facts have to be shown in a logical manner, of course, and editors, reviewers, and the readers should grasp the scientific significance very easily. If you have a lot of data, too many data, consider preparing 2 papers out of one big paper. Maybe an important point here is that, of course, you know very well as reviewer yourself, the editors and the reviewers are all busy scientists, so make things easy. That goes hand in hand with what I said before. It should be a clear message. Which journal do you want to submit to? Well, first of all, that's somehow my own rule of thumb. Just look at your references and try to see where this your manuscript will fit better. That will help you narrow down your own choice. And of course, sometimes you have very, very novel, very exciting data. You will want to publish also in, let's say, higher impact fact journals. Sometimes you have never published there. So this is also a choice, but then you will have to assess this very appropriately, just to avoid disappointment that you submitted and 3 days later you got rejected. That might be a mismatch. So look also, you will make a top 3, 4, I don't know, of journals where you want to publish. So just look at the recent publication in this journal. Do they fit somehow the scope, or are they in the same way written as your paper and so forth? But also very important, when you choose a journal, ask yourself the following questions. Is the journal peer-reviewed? This is very important. What's the journal audience? You might not know that, but some people might know which type of readers are looking at some journals. And also, what's the journal impact factor, or if the journal has an impact, because it's possible that it doesn't have yet or not at all an impact. Don't submit your manuscript to more than one journal. This is a very, very important rule, because at least at this moment there are ways of finding out if you have submitted at several places. So, for instance, the journal when I'm editor-in-chief, Environment National, this is how the web page looks like. Very normal. All the journals, they have a very similar web page. Of course, the information hidden there might be different. So first of all, you just look at the aims and scope of the journal and see if it really matches your manuscript. But you can also look at accepted types of articles, the readership, and also current hot topics. And these are shown, I think it should have been here somewhere below some of the hot topics. You can see here most downloaded articles, so then you can see which topics are trending at this moment in a journal, the recent articles, also the most cited, so lots of information which can help narrow down the selection. And one thing that I say, at least to my PhD student, and they listen to me, is just try to stick to the guide for authors in your manuscript, even at the first draft. So try already to start in the proper layout, and it will save your time, but also the editors and the reviewers time. This is something that I like to emphasize that the editors do not like to waste time on poorly prepared manuscripts, and this is really a sign of disrespect, and it happened from time to time. Unfortunately, it really happened, and then there is almost no choice than desk rejects. And this is a little bit of a summary of what I said before. So I'm going to give you a lot, as I said, from my own point of view about how to prepare the research article. I'm just going to keep short because I'm pretty sure that most of you wrote a lot of papers. So, but maybe I'm going to emphasize some of the points that I think are very important. So first of all, the title, abstract, and the keywords are rather important because they are used for indexing purposes. So people will find your paper much faster if these are given properly. And then for the main text, one thing that you have to keep in mind, and you have to be as concise as possible. So because journal space is not unlimited, so you will get a lot of time the comment that this is too long. You have to shorten it by 20%, by 40% or so. That's very important. For the rest, I'm pretty sure that you know very well this division in the different sections. Write with clarity, objectivity, okay, accuracy, and brevity. So these are very important points when we read a paper. How clear is it? And as I said, and that goes not only for manuscripts, but that goes also for proposals, grant proposals. When you write, if the assessor doesn't get it from the first read, then you don't have a big chance. That's very important. So keys, what I think to successful scientific writing are to be alert for different common errors like sentence construction. Of course, myself, I'm not an English native. Most of you probably are not English native, so we really have to pay attention. And then, of course, we will not always use the proper synonyms, so that we can pay attention to that. Sometimes incorrect tenses. Probably I make also a lot of mistakes while I'm talking fast. So that's also. But when you write it, you have the chance to correct yourself, inaccurate grammar, and using of non-English words. So at least here in Europe, we use Dutch, French, Italian, Spanish, German almost every day. So we are starting to mix different words. So of course, this is very important that we use them the proper words. Maybe this is the what you see here in blue. Consider having the final manuscript checked by a specialized office. This is something which you should consider. We consider also, especially when we want to submit to a high impact journal, and that can help. Write direct and short sentences. Of course, this is important as well. One piece of information per sentence is sufficient. Avoid multiple statements in one sentence. We do have, I don't want to tell you which nations, but some nations, they have the tendency of writing a paragraph in half page, a sentence in 1 page or half page, and then yes, it's very difficult to follow. Break the text into paragraphs. Just make it as easy to read for the people, like you will like to read a paper, so not to have headache after reading it. Title, a good title should contain a few possible words that adequately describe the content of the paper. You identify the main issue in the title. You are accurate, short, as said. Don't use rarely used abbreviation. In general, abbreviation should not be added in the title, and try to attract readers. Now, it's not an opera or a drama that we are trying to make with the titles, so it's not extremely. You don't try to make bombastic titles, but try to be the title. What we say sometimes, the title should be sexy, and that we can look at it. Then abstract is very important. So the abstract is most probably, together with the title, what most of the readers will read. If they don't find your abstract interesting by looking, I'm just saying, in PubMed or Web of Science, they are not going to go to the paper. So the abstract actually is the key to your manuscript, and also from the editorial point of view. So we look at the abstract, we look at all the papers that we receive, we look at the abstract, and then try to go further. I will tell you a little bit about that later. So you should have not a long abstract, 150, 300 words eventually, and then it has to be clear. Not all results need to be mentioned, so please be aware of that. Only the most important. The introduction, you know very well. The introduction tend to be very long. I see that almost each time I do my PhD student and try to tell them it has to be short. It shouldn't be a lesson of history. You just have to answer some of those questions, if possible, in a funnel form. So what's the problem? Are there any solutions? Which one is the best? What are the main limitations? And what you hope to achieve, and what at the end of the study. So try to keep it short. A lot of the things of comparison with the literature, for instance, can come also in the discussion where you really discuss your data compared to the literature. So this, I said, so not a history lesson, it's also not a literature review and introduction. So please be aware of that. That's something that I don't really like to see. Don't overuse expression novel, first time, first ever, paradigm shift. And so there are plenty of such kind of catchy things which are probably not saying much. This is also something very important, cite only relevant references. And a few journals, they do have a limit on the number of references in the introduction, just to avoid that people are citing whatever they cite. So for methods, I don't really have a lot of things to tell. Maybe one important thing is that this part you probably know very well. You have to describe very properly the statistical analysis that has been done. So this is crucial. Sometimes it's so complicated that people don't make much out of it. So try to simplify, but still be comprehensive as possible. And if some of the methods are already published by you and others, just give the proper reference and give a short, brief description. So you don't have to reproduce the whole description. And like this, you avoid also a high score in the plagiarism check. I will come back a little bit later on the plagiarism. Results, you should include the main findings. So sometimes not all the findings, and sometimes also negative findings are also important to be mentioned, so that people should not try that if it's not working, for instance. And then, yeah, the results of the statistical analysis. This is very, very important. Probably you know as good as me that figures and tables are the visual solution to your results to make them more understandable. And of course, that the figures and table need to be discussed, but it's very nice to have as many results as possible in figures and table and not in the text. So that use the text to discuss them or compare to the literature, but not necessarily to descriptively present your results. That's a little bit my feeling. There can be debate on that. I'm pretty sure that people have different opinions, but that's my opinion on that. And of course, the discussion is the most important section of your article, where you really put into perspective the data that you have. So you have, I put it here, you have the chance to sell your data to the reader. So why are your data much more interesting than other people, or as interesting as other people's data? And I have to admit that many manuscripts, even so, the abstract was very nice. You go through it, you look at the method, the result, that's fine. And then the discussion, you have headache just because people were not able to discuss it properly. So spend enough time on the discussion and make it as complete as possible. So don't keep it weak or incomplete, as I said. And then I have here a set of questions that you can ask while you are writing it. How do your results relate to your original question, the objectives? Because sometimes people are describing whatever else, but not what they initially had in mind. Do you provide interpretation for each of your presented results? That's also important. Are there limitations? Are your results consistent with what other investigators have reported? So are you in agreement or disagreement with them, and why? So this has to be very well documented. And does the discussion logically lead to your conclusion? And one thing that I really want to point out, and I've seen also with some of my students, don't make statements which are not supported by your results, and statements which you think that there might be true, but you cannot prove. So this is very important. So take it in small steps. Avoid non-quantitative words. Some of those ones are extremely rapidly dramatic, massive, and so forth. The conclusions. One thing that I want to, actually there are two things that I want to tell about the conclusions. Should not be too long. So a few sentences will suffice. And do not summarize the paper, because the abstract is for this purpose. So here you just have to conclude in a few sentences what is your paper leading to, what's really the message. And then, of course, references. There is not much to tell here, but you have to get them right, adhere to the guide for authors of the journal, if possible. It's not the editor's duty to format the references. So of course you check the reference type, so that's no problem. But what I wanted to mention here, avoid citing personal communications. And I've seen that in a lot of papers coming from the industry. They say unpublished report or personal communication because it's somehow classified data, and that's not very good to cite. Manuscripts not accepted for publication can be cited or can be added in the supporting information used for review purposes, so that can be overcome. And also try to avoid citing articles published only in local languages, and especially those ones that you cannot trace via a link, web link, or online, so you cannot read online. So that's very annoying to see such kind of references. Now, the supplementary material or supporting information, as it's named for other publishers, this is very important, and I try to convince my PhD students that not everything has to go in the main manuscript, and lots of things can go into the supplementary material. It's just there. I always tell them the following: you have this bunch of data. So let's say you have, let's consider as 100%. Put 30% in the main manuscript. Put 50, 60, 70% in the supporting information, because you are not going to make a second paper only out of the supplementary information. So everything which is not going to another paper, just put in the supplementary information, because some people can use that. So this is very important. So for instance, lots of large tables and detailed tables, long protocols, which are probably difficult to get in the main. So of course it's available online, and most of the people making use of it. So that's how it should be. So use the supplementary material. Don't be shy to have it. I can tell you from my own experience, that was our record. We had a paper published in intensive care medicine. I think the paper published was 8 or 9 pages, and the supplementary information 75 pages of long tables and details. And so was it. We will not have made another paper. Okay. All right. The cover letter, very important, because it's your chance to speak to the editor directly. So most of the editors will look at the abstract and the cover letter and then decide what has to be done further. And of course, in some journals, you will have requirements like a statement of novelty or relevance to the field. And this is also what you should do. And of course, this is the part, so an explanation of importance of your research and the significance to the field should be added and suggest to reviewers, but that's maybe one point related to suggestion of potential reviewers is that you should be very diverse. So suggest people from different regions, should definitely not be your supervisor and close friends. And so sometimes we can see some of us can visualize different networks, and they might know this has published with this one, so I'm not going to ask as reviewer. So that's possible. Now I'm going to tell you some words about the editorial process, so a little bit maybe behind the scene and how the things are organized. Of course, it depends very much in the first instance. It depends on the publisher how things are organized. So I can't say anything about ACS or even about Wiley. I do not know how they are organized, so I'm just going to tell about how Elsevier is more or less for all journal organized in the same way. So we do have a journal publisher which is sitting on top of different journals. So for instance, it's covering the same scientific field. For instance, environmental sciences, Environment International is part of the environmental sciences portfolio. We do have one English guy, then Lovegrove, and he is in charge of 5 or 6 environmental science journals. So he's discussing with the editors-in-chief. We just had last week an editorial meeting where we discussed different strategies and what we should do, not do, and so further, new editors to appoint, and so such kind of discussion. So this is the journal publisher sitting on top of us and discussing with the editor-in-chief. Many journals, they have one editor-in-chief, but they can be 2, they can be 3, depending on the journal, depends on the broad scope, how broad is the scope of the journal. So you may have editors-in-chief with different expertise present. And the editors-in-chief are taking the first decision. So when the manuscript is submitted, it's coming to us. So it's distributed according to our expertise. So yesterday evening, I got, I think, 8 new manuscripts submitted to Environment International that I have to go through them today, because today there will be another 7 or 8. So I cannot wait 1 or 2 days, because then I have just too many to handle at once. So it has to be, at least as editor-in-chief, it's almost a daily duty. For many journals, probably you have experienced large delays. That means that the editors-in-chief are not going daily into the system. That's the direct conclusion. And of course, there is a lot of responsibility. You all have your daily duties, but this is also one of the daily. If you accept to be an editor-in-chief, then you know that you have to do this also on a daily basis. Like you have lunch on a daily basis or breakfast, then this too going to the system. So what happens here, the editor-in-chief, there are a few slides later on about what's really going on. Just takes the first decision, so read. I spend maybe 10 to maybe maximum 50 minutes per paper, so that's quite a lot. Going through the abstract and cover letter, and then maybe eventually quickly through the different section, and then decide if the paper is not good at all, or not fitting the aim of scope and so forth. I will tell you later, or we push it further to the associate editors. And actually, the associate editors will go, the associate editors, at least for our journal, will get around 5 to maybe 8 manuscripts per week. Okay. Even that is too much, maybe 5 or 6 per week. So they don't get so many, so they might get 1 a day. So they have a little bit more time to go through them. And then they will select the different reviewers if the manuscript is good. Probably at that stage, in the hands of associate editors, the desk reject rate is less. so it's much lower. So actually they do the hard work in a different way. So selection of the reviews. And then, of course, we do have guest editors for special issues. The problem is that most of them are not trained as editors. So they have no idea how often they have to go in the system, what they have to do. And then we got a lot of questions. What should I do? Oh, I don't find reviewers, and so further. And then we do have a journal manager who's taking care of technical aspects of the journal. That's a very busy person because it takes care of all the parts. So before getting published, but also after getting published. So I made here a scheme. It's a very busy one. So I tried to make 3 categories. So one is the editorial check, so a little bit in blue. Oh, I see that these are still in purple, sorry. So those 2 should have been in blue. So the editorial check, and then you have in purple the review process and editorial decision. So this is a little bit, so the second one is mostly in the hands of associate editors. The third one, so there's the production process after your paper has been published. There is still a long way about making the page proofs and so further. I will just briefly go through, for instance, the editorial check. At this pre-check, as we call it, so it's the journal manager sometimes looking at, oh, you have no double spaces, or there are no line numbers, or I don't know, such kind of things. So not scientific check of the pre-check of the manuscript. And then the editor-in-chief will look at suitability. Does it fit the aims and scope of the journal? Looks also the plagiarism. I think I have the next slide is something related to plagiarism. I'm going to show you how we look at it. What's the method presented? Is there sufficient quality of science? Sometimes it's a little falls outside our own expertise, so it's very difficult to judge that. And then we pass it to the associate editors and ask eventually, yes, do you see enough science there? Novelty and innovation, I said, for me, this is very, very important. And also the way of writing and presentation. So if the figures are dodgy or the figures are very nice and exciting to look at. So that's also very important. Of course, the content is important, but also the format can be also important. So this is at this stage, as I said, well, maybe one important thing that at this stage, there are a lot of those desk rejects. Okay, so desk reject means that the paper doesn't go through review process, but is rejected at the editorial stage, right? As mentioned here. And the reason is that we cannot send manuscripts which are not very good to the reviewer. So we actually is a disservice to ask reviewers to spend time. So that's why we try to select only the papers who really deserve to go through review process that they, and probably with a good probability of acceptance. So I try to train my students and tell that if it was not desk rejected at editorial stage, it goes through review. So you have a good chance of getting it through. Of course, the reviewers might be very critical, or they are even more, so the reviewers are even more experts in the field. But of course, at least it has passed the editorial part. So for the plagiarism, there are different systems. So at least Elsevier, I do not know about the other publishers. Elsevier works with Authenticate, and this is an automatic, so it's built in the software, is built in the system, and the manuscripts are checked against the database of 20 million, even more, peer-reviewed articles. And this is what we get as scores. So you have here the manuscript numbers, and then there are different scores. So there are 2 scores for each manuscript. So one score, the first score, this one, gives the duplication with the literature. So 20% means that there is an overlap with different published papers, but can be also in the introduction a little bit. Some sentences in the introduction can be also in the methods if you cite or if you copy and paste some of your own methods. So that's not very worrying, as you see here, 17, 11, 12, 29. So that's all fine. That's looking. But when you have something like this 69, oops, you say, all right. So and then you go inside and then you check and then you see blocks of text copied from somewhere else, right? So then you return to the authors and then you say, okay, it doesn't go like this. Please arrange it. Or sometimes it's really a copy and paste from one or two articles. And if this copy and paste is in the discussion and the results, then it has no chance of going through. So it's just checked and discussion. The second score, so the second column, is a duplication with previously submitted manuscript and most of the time rejected at the same journal. Okay, so as you can see, so it's a check for authors, title, and the abstract. So sometimes the same authors have submitted another paper with another topic, and then you have a higher score, like 38%. So that means that, but the subject can be different. So you have to look exactly where it is. Sometimes we have 100%. So the paper has been rejected, and now it's just resubmitted as it was. And then, of course, that's not very good. So we do have a lot of ways of seeing what has been done in the past. During the reviewing process, of course, so as I said, the associate editor will send the papers out for review. We normally encourage them to invite up to 10 potential reviewers to secure 3 reviewers for each paper, depending very much on the topic. So the associate editor for systematic reviews, he normally has 4 or 5 reviewers because 2 have to look at the methodology and 2 have to look at the content. So for systematic review, it's even more crucial to have more reviewers, and eventually reviewers with different expertise. So if the paper is more complex, then you do not want all the reviewers having the same expertise. But that means that the associate editor should have enough expertise to juggle with. It's not always obvious. There is a lot of consultation behind the scenes between the different editors, the editor-in-chief, associate editor, also with the reviewer. Sometimes the reviewer are asking us, say, I've seen this problem, how should I handle it? And so there is a lot of dialogue behind the scene. And then, of course, there are different decisions. Of course, rejector when it's impossible to reshape the paper. That's how it is, or revision, minor or major. And then re-review. So after revision, the paper can be re-reviewed and re-revised and so further. So that can go several times, this process, maybe 2 or 3 times. Of course, you and me, we are also reviewers, so we receive, I think that I receive daily 2 or 3 invitations to review. Of course, I cannot do them all, but sometimes I like to review, and especially I like to review papers which are falling exactly on my expertise. Then I can give really an expert judgment on that. And most of the time is from journals that I already know very well. So I also know what do they expect from me. But there are different options, of course. So you can always decline. So I appreciate when people, when they are invited to review, they decline. That's fine. So they are not anymore asked and remind us, so can you please check that? But eventually give 1 or 2 alternative names of reviewers. That's always nice that the process can go further. And then when you decide to accept, then you should make the best out of it. So that's sometimes people are writing reviews of 2-3 lines, say, oh, this is a very good paper, just publish as it is. That's not what. Probably you know that some of the reviewers are very conscious, and And maybe that's probably the moment that I should tell about that. We do have a very large pool of reviewers, and some reviewers are really top. They do, I'm just saying something, 10, 15 reviews per year. And then some of those people we invite to be members of our editorial board. And in the editorial board, so it gives some also some distinction for the people to be editorial board members. They are requested still to continue reviewing, so let's say 6, 7 papers a year, not really more than that. But also, and this is maybe very important, is that we select many of our associate editors from the editorial board, so people who we know very well, that we know their expertise because they have been reviewers, and so when we have to replace or when one associate editor is stepping down, we do have to select another associate editor, and then editorial board is the first where we look. Also, maybe very important, this is what I do most of the time when I'm late with a review, and most of the time I'm late, I'm sorry about that. Please write to the editor or the editorial office that you need an extension. So just don't neglect it, but just ask. So, of course, why do reviewers review? Probably you know very well. So you have a give and take responsibility. Of course, it's the academic duty. And one of my good friends, actually one of my editorial mentors, I'm not going to give you the name, but he told me that each time that you publish a paper, you should review 2 or 3 papers, because for your paper, there were 2 or 3 reviewers. So this is, you return the favor to the community. So this is why I'm also doing it. So just to be sure on that. But of course, you have a lot of takes. So you are updated with the latest developments. So you really need to read the newest things. May help you with your own research ideas. So that's always. It's also good for your CV. Let's put it like this, and my CV as well. You are aware of new research before other peers. And as I said, you build association with the journals and with the editors, and there is a possibility for editorial board membership. So this is very interesting. And then I'm moving to really the last part, and this is about the production. And the production is done somewhere else than the editorial office. Sometimes we get very angry emails that said, hey, my paper has been accepted, but look at the page proofs they are looking and said, I can't help with anything. That's not in my hands. And sometimes, well, it's done somewhere else. And there are other people with other instructions, so you have to be very careful when you do your own page proofs that there might be mistakes, and try to correct them and try to get engaged in the discussion with the journal manager at that time. I have 2 more slides, or 3 more slides. Get noticed. So you published your paper. Then for many people, it just stops there. So you have to promote your research, but of course you can promote your research also during the preparation of your manuscript. And I have not touched upon, but the highlights, at least for Elsevier, and I think that for another publisher, they use highlights. The highlights are very important also for indexing purposes. The very quick, short sentences on what are the main findings. What I like very much, and I'm not good at all in that, are the graphical abstracts. And many journals, I like many of the graphical abstracts from ESNT, for instance. Some of them are very nice, and then you almost understand what happened in the manuscript from the graphical abstract. You get even more excited to read. So try to pay attention to that as well. And of course, the editors, so for some journals, the editors can select different papers as monthly selection also. So try to get it very exciting, including photos and also, as I said, abstract, because it's much more visible. And maybe this is really the last slide. Of course, what we want to build is a connection between the authors, of course, the editors, but also the reviewers. So these are three, and most of the time we can be all the three or two of them. So this is very important that we try to keep a good dialogue between all these entities to publish the best science. So I thank you very much for your time. I think I'm a little bit over time, but that's usual for me. No worry. And I thank you for your attention. And is there a question? I'm happy to take them. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Adrian. That's really comprehensive. You know, it filled a lot of, at least the gaps to my knowledge about the journal and also the inside of the editorial board, and that's just fantastic. I have to say we may have to have a little bit longer because you already have 11 questions in the queue. I hope that you don't mind if we have a little bit longer because I got quite a lot of exciting questions here. Shall I go through that with you now?
Yes, please go.
Thank you, Adrian. So the first question is, if a researcher would like to join the board of a high impact journal like Environment International, what should they do? Is there a formal application pathway or by invitation only?
Yeah, that's a very good. So there are no forms, or there is no formal way of doing that. So as I mentioned, one way is that we identify. We have done. I told you we had last week a meeting, and that was one of the points. We went through it was a very short list of top reviewers, and we selected 2 or 3 to join the editorial board in the next week. So that was from our side. From your side, if you feel entitled, so for instance, if you say, well, I have reviewed quite a lot for this journal, maybe I take my chance, and so you can write a personal email to the editor. I get also every month, I get such kind of email, and then we evaluate through during the board meeting. We evaluate, and especially if we have already members with the same if we have editorial board members with the same expertise, 2 or 3, then it's very difficult to add another one with the same expertise. But if it's an expertise that we don't have yet, that's always useful. So yes, so if you can just write an email directly.
Great.
To the editor.
Thank you, Adrian. It sounds like you know, if you can show some of your contributions and already being a good reviewers, and the chances higher to be invited or be considered. So the next question is, it seems that MDPI journals like the International Journal of Environmental Research and Public Health, the IGERPH, publish huge numbers of studies very, very fast. Do you have a view on whether this practice is having an impact on the quantity of articles published?
This is an excellent question, and let's say fortunately or unfortunately, I don't know. I have been publishing myself, or my students have published myself very recently, 2 papers, and I have to admit that the reviewer comments were very short. So they, of course, my students were very excited. I said that, well, but you have to, I don't want to say that the publisher by itself has a policy. You say, oh, we find very quickly to reviewers. We don't ask them to reviews longer than, I'm just saying something, 500 words, for instance. So we don't put a limit on it. It has to be also something to do with your person. So for instance, if I accept to review something, I don't give 2 lines of review. So I really go through the paper. So if people, so I think it's not necessarily linked to the publisher. To answer the question, I don't think it's what I want to say is that they have a much, that's my own opinion, they have a much better organized publishing house They really want to grow. This is what I have observed. They do a lot of publicity, a lot of, for instance, that particular journal, a lot of special issues, which are, and so there is a much more effort behind the scenes to get the journal and the other journal from the same publisher promoted. And I think that the big names like, I don't know, Elsevier and ACS publishers, they are relying on the fact that it's rolling, so they don't have to put too much effort in advertising. So from that point of view, my respect to NDPI is actually, I like them very much. And one of the reasons why I like them, and now we are coming to that, probably there was a question related to open access fee, is that they have, to me, a very decent and honest open access fee, and not like other publishers. Okay, so here you can ask me whatever. Why is it so much and so little in some? I don't know, because I'm not involved in any money related. So I'm from the scientific point of view, but it's true. MDPI has a very honest open access fee.
Thank you, AJ, and your objective view on that. I also want to say, today, if you're not an ISEE members yet, please join us, because we actively working on see how we can get some open access journal discount for our members. So it'd be great if you join us. So just a little bit promotion for ISEE.
Yes.
So we have a next question. Oh my God, the question is just coming, AJ. It said, giving many research funders now, these allow use of journal metrics such as impact factor. Should researchers show priorities, speed of publication or another metric over journal prestige?
So if I understand correctly, the question was if we should use another metric than the impact factor.
I think that is what my understanding about this is that because in some of the countries or maybe research field, when you apply for grant, you're not allowed to say, what the impact factor the journal published to show the prestige. So then sometimes people think, should I, going for some journal, I can publish quick, so get people known and then get citations. Or I should go for those really high prestige journal, try one and after another until maybe successful publish?
That's actually a question that we are asking ourselves also daily, but it has nothing to do with grant proposals. So I cannot comment on that, because we do mention the impact factor of the journals when we submit for it. But what I can mention is that why do I say that we do that on a daily basis? Because you have some data, you have a bunch of data, and then the students say, oh, where should we publish them? So as I said before, you publish it in something which fits. Okay, you don't always have material for high impact factor journals. That's the same for us. So sometimes we produce just very normal things, and you publish in a normal journal. There is nothing wrong with that, at least from my perspective. And of course, then maybe it's even easier to publish in a normal journal because it just fits there. If you have very exciting data, let's say once a year, we do have maybe once a year, maybe twice a year, something that we say maybe we should aim higher, then you should aim higher, but not with the purpose of, yeah, I do not know, maybe it's very easy for me to tell about that, but it's not only the rush about the impact factor. It shouldn't be only the rush about the publishing in high impact factors. At least just one thing that's my person in, so environmental sciences, even maybe public health, it's, what can we aim at? 20 impact factor, 20 maybe as the biggest. I don't think that we really aim for nature and science because, yeah, we are not working in a field which is contributing to what's published in nature and science. So impact factor of 10 to 20, that's already high impact factor for us. So that's okay. I don't know, maybe a modest person. I have a direct answer to that.
Sure. Thank you, Adrian. There's a quick there's a quick question. Can they have a copy of your slides?
Yes, but I think that I sent you the presentation, right?
Yes, that's right, and I can provide that.
That was
yeah.
That was the purpose. Yeah, you can have.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you. And also just let everyone know this video is recorded, and also Adrian kindly agreed that we could supply this to ISEE Global Education YouTube channel. So probably in the next few days, you can also watch this or review this or disseminate this to your friends and colleagues. And we're the ISEE Global Education channel, which there also have a lot of many great webinars there as well. Okay, fantastic. So we also have people ask you, so this is a quick one. What are your thoughts on preprints?
Can you repeat it? I haven't heard the question.
So the question is, what are your thoughts on preprints? So like, yeah.
Yes. Yes, to answer this question, I have to tell you that my brother is working in physics, and he is very much used to preprints. And each time I was very much wondering, okay, so what's the use of these preprints? And he explained me that just to be sure that nobody else is publishing that before, so you have priority, even if it's in preprint, but you are the first one, especially in a very fast-moving field. So this is just to be sure that you are the first one. Now, for normal papers, I do not know if it's really normal papers. I mean that a normal paper to me would be that you have your, I'm just saying, your cohort, and then you have done something with your cohort and you have results in your cohort. Nobody else will have those results because it's your cohort. So, I mean, there is no rush in being the first one there. So from that, in this example, I don't see the point of a preprint. But for a very fast-moving field, it's okay. I think that there are lots of, and actually even the Elsevier, but also ACS, they accept having a preprint somewhere. I can't remember the name of these servers, to have it somewhere and then to submit the paper. You do have, at that time, just to tell you, you do have a high plagiarism score because the software is looking also into those preprint servers. And then you end up with, I don't know, 70, 80 or even more %. And then, of course, the editor will say, oh, what's the problem? And then you tell the editor, okay, it's a preprint, and that's accepted by Elsevier. And so from that point of view, it's okay. You just have to ask yourself if it's really useful.
Great. Thank you, Adrian. So there's an interesting question. They ask, do journal editors get paid?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
I can tell you because I'm as you know, I'm in two types of positions. So as editor-in-chief, you have much more responsibility. As I said, you really have to go daily into the system. So it's part of your job. So it's also paid as part of your job. Okay. As associate editor, you're paid less, just because you don't have so much. Well, first of all, so much responsibility, but also you don't have so much workload. But you do get paid by Elsevier, and I know that by ACS as well, and I know that by Springer also, because I have some friends. So you are paid. As a reviewer, I don't think that any publisher pays as a reviewer. Otherwise, we will do much more reviews. And yeah, that's and also not as editorial board member. This is not.
Thank you. I just checked a Dropbox link. So if everyone who want to download the AG slide, you can download from this Dropbox link, and you don't have to register Dropbox account. You can just direct download this PDF. Fantastic. So this question to Adrian is, given the large number of papers published every year with more than 20 authors, it can be hard to say who contributed what. So to ensure individual contributions are more clearly recognized, should the researchers aim to publish single-authored papers or limit the number of authors on papers to only those who made clear and substantial contributions?
This is a very good question, which I have anticipated a little bit.
Great.
As you can see, additional slides. Just to tell you, so I had almost 120 slides, which I narrowed down to 45 for your presentation, to you. But I do have such kind of things, and these are some guidelines on how to assign the authorship. So so the author should have substantially contributed to the conception or design, or acquisition of data, or analysis and interpretation of data. Okay, so this is one first point essential. If they don't fit into this point one, maybe you shouldn't go through some other thing. So then at that time, they will deserve to be in the acknowledgements. Okay, and then of course, all the authors should draft and or revise it critically. And if there is one thing that, because Xiao mentioned that I have so many hundreds of papers published, I can tell you one thing, that all those papers have been extremely critically reviewed by me or revised by me, sometimes more than other authors. So that's maybe one thing that I'm rather proud of. So, but people should have substantially contributed.
Thank you, Adrian.
And yeah, and I have plenty of other things about who is the first author, corresponding, adjunct, and first, and maybe the acknowledgements, because I mentioned that the ones who do not really fit the bill as being co-authors, they should be acknowledged, and of course, that's very important not to forget those people in the acknowledgement. As you have probably seen, maybe since 1 or 2 years, at least Elsevier, I think that also other publishers, they have introduced an additional form that you have to submit, which is called author credit statement, where you have to pinpoint the contribution of each author to the, so is it the writing or the funding or whatever. And that, when you prepare that one, that can help you filter those who have not contributed. Yeah, that's my personal opinion on that.
Great, thank you, Adrian. That's really precious. I'm going to close this Q&A session now. After the next question be answered, because I still have 7 for Adrian to answer. So I just give people the last opportunities that if you have any burning questions you want to ask, please tap in. After maybe a few minutes, I will going to close it, because I do appreciate that Adrian have other commitments as well. So I have this question from Thomas Esselbird in Australia. He said, I enjoyed your very comprehensive presentation, Adrian. If an earlier or mid-career researcher would like to be an editor-in-chief or of a famous journal one day, like yourself, what steps should they take to make this ambition a reality?
Yes, well, I can tell you my own story. How was it? So before being appointed first as associate editor, I have really reviewed a lot. I think that I have reviewed at least 20 papers for those 2 journals, 20 papers per year for those 2 journals where I have been, where I'm editor. So, but I didn't have any ambition at that time of becoming editor. So it was even not through my mind. When I was approached by the person that I said that was my mentor, editorial mentor, and he said that you should be a good editor because now you have seen a lot of types of paper, you are fast, that's very important, you are ambitious, so why don't you try? And I said, okay, I'm going to try for 1 year and see what comes up. But it may be luck that somebody has taken me as a mentor or a mentoree. Yeah. So I think that there are different ways, but of course, talking, and that's why I really encourage the dialogue with editors, because the editors, as you have seen, editors are authors and reviewers and then editors. So it's not that they are somewhere up and nobody can touch them, and not at all. So keeping the dialogue open and then even show your ambition, that might help. You never know which people you meet. Most of the people should be helpful in helping others.
Thank you, Adrian. That's really great.
That's my personal opinion.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. I think, you know, what I heard is also from previous our webinar, like with Mark and Marco, is that mentorship is very important. But also through what you told us, that it's also, you need to have, as a researcher, I guess even just human being, you need to have this willingness to contribute, to help others, is very important as maybe a start stage and those steps. So we also have a question from, sorry, it's anonymous here. Thank you. How long would you recommend spending for each manuscript you review? And here has another person asked a very similar question, said, how long do you recommend spending on reviewing manuscripts? I seem to spend too long.
Yeah, that's so as you have seen, most of the publishers, they allow you, or they give you 3 weeks to look or to review a paper. So what happens in my case is that at the moment that I accept it, I go at that right at that moment, I go for 5 or 10 minutes through it very quickly, like really page down, just to have an idea about it's all about, and then to the tables, and so very, very quickly that I really have an idea about that. And then I leave it for some days, maybe 1 or 2 weeks, and try to keep it in my background. And sometimes I search sometimes very when I have 5 minutes break, let's say during lunchtime or so, 5 minutes break, then I try to search what has been published in the area very quickly, so that when I start on the review, that I know a little bit of background on that specific topic. Maybe I spend somewhere between 2 and 3 hours for one review, something like this. Maybe it's more on putting on paper what's in your head than really, yeah. I think the reading itself goes very quickly for me, maybe half hour. I'm used to see lots of paper, so it can go very quickly. But putting, I would say 3 hours maybe in total, and then the background work that you have done, maybe another 1 hour spread through different days. But this is how I work. I don't focus one day only on that. No, not at all. I cannot. I mean, I don't have the time to do that. Great.
Thank you. Actually, ISEE AWPC, we do have a plan that our executive counselor Asuka and also Wei Jie, they are organizing and planning a workshop, a webinar on peer reviewing articles as well. So watch this space, the audience, and hopefully that I will provide a bit more information on that in the due time. So we also have Alex Waits saying that plagiarism detection software generates similarity index, which can get high due to the similarity of text in methods, which is hard to avoid, especially in statistical methods. If we mention this specific source of similarity to the editor, can it be accepted? Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's also something that we faced on our own papers. As I mentioned, if you use the same methodology. Of course, you have different types of methods. So you have the statistical method, which probably a lot of you are using, but also you have the instrumental method. And those instrumental methods, they can be referred to a previously published paper, or they can go into the supplementary information. You don't really need to keep it in the main text. So like this, you avoid that. As for the statistical methods, that can be discussed with the editor. Of course, so it's the method. So you are just using the same method with another set of data, for instance. I would be much more worried if I see similarity in the results and in the discussion. Then there when it starts to be tricky. Even introduction can be adjusted, so the editor can say, please. So for the methods, it's not the most critical part, let's put it like this. So that can be even mentioned to the editor. Or once more, if you think it's really the same and you have published it somewhere else, even the detailed statistical methods, you just refer to it to another paper, you put them all in the supporting information, and that's it. If you really want to avoid that.
Great, thanks for the tips as well. So this anonymous guest asked, can researchers not affiliated with Environment International nominate themselves to guest edit an edition of the journal? If so, how? Thank you.
To get what? To get an?
So essentially this person saying, this audience saying that they are not affiliated currently with Environment International. So I guess that means they are not an editor or an editorial board. Can they nominate themselves, say, I would help some guest editing, and if they would like to put their hands up for a guest editing, how they could do that? Do they just email the editor, say, I would like to do some guest editor handling? Yeah, thank you.
Okay, but I think that there were at least two things mentioned here which are very different. So first of all, as the editorial board, that can be also an ad hoc. So a person say, oh, I would like to be in the editorial board, and I say, okay, please send your CV and send the motivation, and then we can evaluate it. So that's for the editorial board, or we select based on the top reviewers. But the other one with the guest editor, the guest editors are, let's say, they are associated with special issues. So the special issue has to be accepted at the journal, and of course, then the guest editors are also accepted as editors. And, in this process, we don't have a lot of, we are not so much involved in the process of selecting the guest editors by the people who want to prepare a special issue. So let's say that several people gather together and then they want to prepare a special issue. They say, okay, you should be guest editor and that, and then they make a proposal to us on the topic and on the guest editors. And we are entitled to decline it because it doesn't fit the aims and scope, or we just publish a special issue 1 or 2 years ago on the same topic and such kind of thing. Or if it's very exciting, then we accept the special issue, and then the people who are mentioned as guest editor can be guest editor. So even without being on any of our lists, let's say. That's probably somehow an answer, if I understood correctly the question.
I think you probably understand very well, and also feel there's some gaps in our knowledge. Thank you. We only have 3 questions now, so which is great. So this question is actually related to, I guess, the editors as well. So this audience asked, Adrian mentioned that sometimes guest editors aren't trained and this can lead to delays. I'm wondering where editors get training, and if this training includes unconscious bias training to ensure editors focus on the scientific quality and are not biased by the names of familiar authors?
Yeah, that's a very good question, and I wish I had more time to do the training myself. But so the guest editor, they get an formal training, but it's mostly on learning how the system works. And so, for instance, we do have now editorial manager system, and so what are the things that you are still able to do something in the system. As for the scientific editing, the editors are coming, most of them, they are coming back to us with questions. We do have somewhere buried in between my some a presentation where we point some of the points that well they should take care during the editorial work. And I think that I help most of them just in the background by looking, because I'm every day in the system, so I see also what the other people are doing and or not doing. And then I tell them after a couple of days, hey, you haven't done that, so you should do it like this, you should do it like this. So there is a lot of mentorship really on one-on-one, at least with me, but probably I spend too much time in the system. So, but there is no really like formal training on the scientific part. Yeah, so that's very difficult to organize. But on one-on-one, yes, in many cases.
Thank you, Adrian. I think a lot of people are going to say, can I help? So they can also get to the one-to-one, with a really nice chief editor. That's very kind of you. So we have this question from the audience that I enjoyed your very comprehensive presentation, AJ. If an earlier mid-career researcher would like to be, actually, okay.
Yeah, you read that one.
Yeah, that's right. So this is another one, the last one. So thank you for this amazing information, Professor AJ. I have a query regarding self-citation. Well, considering for the publication of paper in any journal, is there any limitation for self-citation?
No, I don't think so. Not on the formal level. I haven't seen that. What happens from time to time, reviewers who are very good, very acknowledgeable in the field, they can tell, oh, you have cited yourself too many times in the paper. That happens very rarely. Okay, so I don't think that there is a requirement or restriction on that. Where you see that, or when other people see that as a problem, is then when you have your own evaluation. So for instance, one person has published 50 papers, I'm just saying something, 50 papers, the 50 papers have been cited 2,000 times, but from the 2,000 times is 1,500 self-citations. So that can be a problem. So it's not the evaluation at the journal level, but it's more your own evaluation in the context of, say, promotion or in any. So there, it should be much more worrying.
Great.
I don't know what's a good ratio of self-citation to citations. I think that in my case might be a ratio of maybe 1 to 30, 1 to 40, maybe something like this. I don't know, but something close to that one, as far as I remember. Yeah.
Great, thank you, AJ. That's all the questions, and we already over the time. And I think we had a really great session today with Adrian, and also I just want to thank you, and also to our audience. I'm Xiao, and I see you all at the next ISEE AWPC webinar on Friday, 18th of June at 4 p.m. Sydney time. It's another seminar webinar on tips from an editor with Professor Rich Mitchell from Glasgow University, an editor from the journal House and Place. See you.
Thank you too.